Okay. All right, everybody. So finding yourself in a comfortable seated position and really making sure that you have some space to move. You do not need a yoga mat, but just having a place where you can freely move and maybe check around your space, just looking to see if you need to lock the door or close a curtain or let a family member know that you're going to be occupied so that you're not interrupted, so that you can take this opportunity to be with some like-hearted people in a space where you can come home to yourself just a little bit more. And as we go into our practice, I would like to encourage you two things. One, as you come back from the day and you start to center and be with yourself a little bit more, allow yourself to come into the space around you. Sometimes that's enough. Don't force yourself to embody, so to speak, or force the breath to go deeper, or somehow think you're doing it wrong if the body feels a bit inaccessible to you today. So wherever you are today, I think it's always important to just sense into the space, breathe into the space, and if that's what you can do, that's what you can do. The other thing I would encourage you to do is really pay attention to the alertness of the spine and of the shoulders and of the hips. And what I mean by that is really allowing for the bones of the spine to stack one on top of the other, to really allow the spine to be long. And when you're standing or you're pressing through the hands where the shoulder and the hip muscles need to engage, just really allow for those muscles to keep the bones into the sockets without sinking or kind of slumping, if that makes sense. Okay, enough talking. So just taking some time here to allow for the breath to continue to come in. And as you've heard me say many times before, feel free to ignore me if at some point you need to just settle in and just experience a little bit more. And if you're unsure how to help your spine be a little bit more alert and in a good position, it's always helpful to have the hips a little bit higher than the knees. And so if you're a little bit tight, like I am right now, I needed to lift my bottom up just a little bit higher. And allowing, as we start to sink into the space, allowing the eyes to rest maybe in the lower third of the visual field on the floor in front of you. Maybe the jaw to soften and the back of the neck to lengthen. We're just going to take a little movement here. Just have a little movement of the trunk over the hips by rocking back and forth. Keeping the shoulders stacked over the hips. I call this hinging, meaning that the movement is primarily happening in the hips. And start to bring the shifting from side to side. And as you shift from side to side, if you're able to lift one sit bone and then the other, just noticing the impact of that on your body. So, for instance, as I do this, I notice that one of my knees is starting to get a little twingy, so I'm not going to go up as high. Just going to wait for my body to let me in, so to speak. And then moving in a circle. And as you move in a circle, feeling the bones of the sit bones, the bones of the pelvis, these broad, thick bones that hold us up in sitting and standing. We're doing a little circle around those large bones. And if you don't really feel them, or you're not sure what I'm talking about, sometimes what really helps is to move the flesh aside a little bit, and you'll feel it a little bit more. Just experimenting with the circle here, feeling. Again, making sure that I talk a lot about feeling and sensing, but you can feel and sense from over here. You can be aware outside in as well. And coming to rest, coming to pause, seeing if you can balance between the left and the right sit bones. We're going to move into what are called the first and second movements of the spine. So for some people, they call this cat-cow. But keeping the hands resting on the knees or the front of the thighs, start to draw the belly button in towards the spine. And as you draw the belly button in, you'll notice that the back, the low back naturally rounds. And then if you release the belly, and the belly starts to just move forward, gravity pulling it forward, the back will arch in the opposite direction. So we're just going to continue with this idea of the belly button moving towards the spine, the back curves, and then releasing the belly, and the back curves in the other direction. As we do this movement, you may notice that the breath has its own kind of rhythm here. And in general, it's helpful to imagine as the belly button draws in to exhale. And as you inhale, releasing the belly, allowing this space around the pelvis to fill. Exhale. Everything squeezes out. And as you do this movement, you may notice that the movement wants to continue up the spine, past the lower back, up between the shoulders, all the way to the head. And when you do that, the chin will naturally move towards the chest. And then as you release the belly and start to shift the curve of the spine, the chest will start to lift. And even maybe the chin will make its way to look up towards the ceiling. So allowing for this movement of the spine to continue its progress and movement all the way up. And coming to settle, pausing here for a moment, just noticing how just the very simple beginnings of movement starts to allow for energy in the bodies to start to circulate. Maybe there's a little waking up of some awareness in the body. And going into the third and fourth movements of the spine. So I like to start with the hands on the shoulders to do this. And this is side bending, right and left. So just starting here with bringing that right elbow down towards the right hip, left elbow up towards the ceiling. And then coming back up to center and side bending left. So moving back and forth, gentle flowing movement. And we're really isolating this movement here in the spine. Very gently starting a conversation with this amazing structure that protects our nervous system Continuing to allow for the eyes to rest into the sockets, maybe resting on the floor in front of you. And one more. Pausing here. Releasing the hands down by the sides, and we're going to add the arms now. Now, if you have any shoulder issues, just seeing how your body feels as we do this gentle warm up. But if this starts to tweak one side, or you have an active shoulder issue like frozen or impingement syndrome or rotator cuff, then on the affected side, just keep the hand on the shoulder, but you can continue to do the movement, but allowing the elbow to be the one that does the work, so to speak. If you'd like, you can even switch back and forth just to play around, see how that feels. Switching one hand to the shoulder, then the other, even if you don't have any issues. It's really helpful to just kind of notice all the moving parts that happen just for us to reach forward or reach up. Okay, bring the hands down by the sides. And we'll go into the 5th and 6th movements of the spine, rotation. So just allowing the hands to continue, maybe if you'd like, just grazing them on the floor or by your sides, turning your body to the left and then to the right, and moving back and forth. And as we do this rotation, allowing the arms to start to make their way up off the floor, continuing with the rotation, and until they get to about shoulder height. So we're not trying to go past the shoulders here. If you'd like, you can dance a little bit with the arms, maybe swing them as you rotate from side to side. And then seeing about letting go, seeing if a smoother, faster movement is helpful. And gradually start to wind down from that. And pausing here. Now you're welcome to, at another time, explore this movement by switching the legs. Sometimes a whole lot of other information and awareness can come from doing that. We're going to continue on into a table position. So that means being on all fours. So moving whatever props you have, if you were sitting on the floor, and coming into this position where the hands are under the shoulders, knees under the hips, and the tops of the feet are resting on the mat. If you have any wrist issues whatsoever, then make sure to fold the mat a little bit so that the heels of the hands are resting on the mat, and that will help take some pressure off the wrist. So anything that elevates the heel of the hand a little bit will help you. And we're going to take a moment just to bring some awareness to the wrist, the palms, and the long bones of the fingers. So just lifting the fingers up a little bit so we can feel the heels of the hand, and then start to very gently transfer weight over the palms of the hands into the long bones of the fingers and back. So this is not a full weight bearing through the hands. This is just a little transfer of weight into the wrist, the palms, and the fingers. So seeing if you can really spread the weight through all the way to the fingertips. And something that sometimes helps as you do that is to let your head turn from side to side. I, in general, do about 5 repetitions for different things, just if your brain needs to have an idea of how many. And then coming back to center here. And if you need to take a pause, you're always welcome to take a pause. You can curl the toes under and just come onto your knees and do some circles. And then coming back. And from here, we're going to start to walk the hands over to the right. So walking the hands over. And from here, maybe rocking over a little bit over the hands, just to see how that feels. And walking the hands back over to the left. And rocking a little bit here. And walking the hands back to center. So we're going to go into a very gentle child's pose here, widening the knees a little bit so that they're about the width of the yoga mat, and just coming back and then moving forward. Still distributing, widening the palms, widening the fingers. If you look at your hands, you can just see if the middle finger is lined up with the edges of the mat, meaning parallel to the mat. And then bringing the knees back more underneath the hips. We're going to try that walking with the hands over to the right again. So that we're side bending at the waist and pressing back. You'll feel a stretch in the outer left side of the waist and the armpit. And coming back. Continuing just to let the eyes rest on the floor. Maybe lengthening through the back of the head, back of the neck. Walking the hands back to center. We'll pause here for a breath. And walking the hands over to the left. And again, pressing back. You'll feel a stretch in the armpit and the right side waist. Hands back. And from here, we're going to, for those of you who would like, we're going to go into a downward facing dog, into a plank. For those of you who are uncomfortable with putting full weight through the arms and the legs in that way, you're welcome to continue just to stay in this position, maybe experimenting with the placement of the knees and rocking back and forth. You can even come forward, pressing the hips towards the ground like this. And for those of you who would like to progress into a downward dog, we're going to press back. As we press back, curl the toes under, lift the knees up, and press back through the legs, the spine, and the shoulders. We're going to not hold this position very long. We're just moving from there into this plank position and then pressing back. Again, this isn't a traditional yoga class. We're mostly warming up and activating the muscles, releasing tension before we go into our meditation. And this last rocking forward, we're going to walk the feet forward towards the hands until You start to get to a point where the hands have to naturally come up off the floor, start to rock from side to side. Letting eventually the hands to let go. And just rock yourself up into standing. We're going to pause here, collect the breath, notice the impact of the shift from the floor to standing and the impact on our breathing. So shifting the awareness now to the connection of our feet to the earth. Sensing and feeling the bones of the feet and the floor, the earth underneath you. And maybe even a little deeper to the prayers of the lineage and the ancestors that came before you. The ancestors of the land and the people who prayed for the goodness of the earth and for their own families, for their safety and well-being, and for the lineage of our own, but also for the many people that related or unrelated to you nurtured and brought you forward to this point. And just allowing those prayers to fill the space around you. If you'd like, you can breathe them in as well as we start to gently rock from toe to heel. Just allowing our body to shift and move within the ocean of regard and care that set the groundwork for our being here. Pausing in the center here, feeling the heel and ball of the foot will start to shift from left to right. And as I mentioned earlier, really allow for the hips to engage. So there's a long sense in the bones. So as we move from side to side, start to feel a little bit more of the edges of the feet. So feeling the outer edge, the inner edges. As you shift left, feel a little bit more of the left edge of the foot, inner edge of the right. As you shift right, inner edge of the right. Outer edge of the right, inner edge of the left. And pausing so you can feel all the edges of the feet. And as you feel the edges of the feet, allow for the knees to be firm. So to do that, pressing the thighs back a little bit so that the thighs engage, the thigh muscles, the quadriceps and hamstrings. And as you press the knees back, the hips will engage the gluteal muscles, contracting to press the hips forward in an equal and opposite measure. So the edges of the feet, the knees pressing back, hips pressing forward. So taking a moment to really feel the engagement of the thighs and the contraction of the muscles in the hips. This is part of the alertness where we are engaging these muscles to help there be a little space in the hip joints and the fluidity of the fluid to move and protect our hips. And in this position, start to allow for the tailbone to descend a little bit as the chest lifts. Lengthening through the back of the neck. This is our mountain pose. This is our place of stability. It helps to draw the prayers of our ancestors to us. And maybe as we do this, you might want to just check and look down just to look at the positioning of your feet, noticing if one might be a little turned out. Sometimes it's helpful just to adjust and shift so that you can feel what it would be like if both feet were pointing straight ahead, which, depending on who you talk to, is optimal. But we're right now mostly concerned with what your body is naturally inclining to do before we shift and adjust it. Okay, so we're going into what some people call a tree pose. So we'll start, before we start this, make sure that if you're feeling anxious or unstable, or you've had any issues in standing, to make sure you have a chair or a wall that you can touch on or keep a hand on to keep you stable. If you've had more anxiety or depression, or just feeling unsupported and unseen in your life, it's really helpful also to have a hand on something, because that sense of support can be very helpful for the emotional self. So we're going to start first by shifting our weight over to the left leg, and really, as I talked about earlier, shift the weight to the left, pressing that knee back, the hip pressing forward. So there's a strong engagement of the hip, feeling the edges of the feet even as you relax the toes. And from here, turning the right knee out to the right and resting the heel of the right foot on the inner left ankle. From here, if it's available to you, allowing for the hands to turn, palms up, reaching out by the sides, and we'll add in 5 sun breaths here. So inhaling, reaching up with the hands, exhaling, hands coming down to center. It's helpful as you do this, if you're feeling unsteady, just to have the hand or the eyes to continue to look down towards the floor. As the arms move, the eyes stay steady. And this last one here, allowing for the hands to settle at the heart. And for those of you who like to do a tree pose with the foot a little higher, you can slide that foot up to rest at the shin, or if you'd like to bring it up to the groin, resting, pressing on the inner thigh. Continuing that engagement of the thigh and the hip. And pressing that right foot firmly against the inner left thigh. Gaze soft. And releasing the hands, releasing the foot. Pausing just to feel and sense the body, noticing the impact. And shifting to the other side. Again, feeling the edges of the right foot, pressing that right knee back, pressing the right hip forward. Turning the left knee out, resting the heel on the inner right ankle. Turning the palms out. Inhaling, exhaling down to center. Some breaths. Notice how With the movement of the arms, you might have let go of the engagement of the thigh and the hips. Allowing the hands to come to rest at the heart. And if you'd like to move the foot, you don't have to move the foot, but for those of you who like to bring the foot up a little higher, you're welcome to do so. Keeping that engagement of the thigh and of the hip. Relaxing the toes. And then releasing the hands, releasing the feet. And coming to a pause, just sensing and feeling the body, the waking up of awareness. Taking a moment to notice what's working. If you're able to stand, if you're able to lift your arms. And we'll go into our warrior series. So turning to the top of your mat. And or the top of your space, just to make sure that you have enough space behind you so that you can do the lunge. So we're going to shift the weight again over to the left leg, feeling the edges of the feet, engaging the thigh and the hip. Stepping back with that right foot. And as we step back, this is a lunge. So we're stepping back, that we're on the ball of the right foot, looking down just to notice that make sure that the left knee is over the left ankle. Taking a moment to allow for the trunk to settle between the left and the right legs, finding a middle ground here. We'll take 5 breaths, inhaling the arms up, lifting through the chest as we drop the tailbone. And if you'd like, you can keep the arms right here, overhead. If you can also allow for movement of the arms and the breath as we inhale, sweeping them up, as you exhale, moving down. And bringing the hands down towards the left thigh. Inhaling that right arm up so that it's overhead. We're going to turn our body to the right so that that right heel pivots and turns so that it's now facing forward. So I'm going to turn so that you can see me. So the right foot is pointing forward, the right arm is up. And from here, letting the right arm come down, palm down, left arm floats up. Taking a moment to breathe here, turning the head to look over the left hand, turning to the right, turning to the left, just letting the head turn from side to side. Very gently. Bringing that right hand down to the outer right thigh. Inhaling that left arm up and over. Breathing into the spaces between the rib cage. Exhaling that arm down. Bringing the right arm back up, bringing the left hand to the left knee or the left elbow, and inhaling that right arm up and over. Breathing into the space between the ribs. And bringing the right arm back into warrior two, this position with the arms outstretched. Turning your head to look over the left hand, and we'll sweep that right arm down, up and around. Pausing here, and then we'll turn, sweeping that arm down, turn the body towards the left knee, turning that right foot towards the left knee and stepping your feet together. Inhaling, raising the arms overhead. And exhaling, bringing the arms down by the sides. So going to the other side now. Making any adjustments that will help support you in your breath and in the quality of the movement. Just allowing yourself to smoothly move, to not rush. So shifting onto the right foot now, feeling the edges of the feet, engaging that right knee and right hip. Feeling the alertness, the engagement of the thigh and the gluteal muscles around the hips, squeezing in towards center. And lifting that left knee, stepping back, coming into this lunge, tucking your knee, right knee over the ankle. The feet are about hip to shoulder width apart, depending on what's comfortable for you. Inhaling into warrior one, you can stay right here, arms overhead, or you can move them with the breath. And last exhalation, bringing the hands down to the thigh, turning the body towards the left, facing forward. That left foot is now facing forward, left arm up. Pausing here, settling between the legs. Bringing that left arm down, right arm up into warrior two. Bringing that left arm down towards the outer left thigh. Inhaling, right arm goes over the head and breathing into the space between the ribs. If your back feels pinchy in this position, try dropping the tailbone just a little bit here. And as you do that, make sure that the knee continues to stay centered over the ankle. And then bringing that right hand or right elbow down to the right knee. Inhaling that left arm up and over. Lengthening through the side body on the left side and breathing into the rib cage. Bringing that left arm back. Pausing here for a moment. Sweeping that left arm down, facing over the right knee. And back around. So doing this rotation of the arm and the trunk. Breathing into the entirety of the space. This is your safe space. Sweeping that left arm forward, turning the body to look to the right, stepping the feet together, arms inhale overhead, and exhaling the arms down. So for those of you who are familiar with pigeon pose, bridge, and shavasana, you're welcome to go into those positions on your yoga mat. For those of you who are following me here in these adaptations, I will do this in sitting. So this very continuing to feel the quality of the body in these transitions. You'll notice that there's a gradual quieting of the body and of the mind. So when that ripple across, if there's a ripple across the water of your stillness, to see if you can settle, pause, whatever you need to do. So sitting towards the edge of the chair, really, and if you can, sitting on something that helps you to feel your sit bones, so something a little bit firmer is helpful. Otherwise, shifting this left foot in just a little bit more towards center and bringing the right ankle on top of the left knee. Hands are at the knee and the ankle. We'll just do this hinging movement that we did at the beginning of our practice. And rocking forward, and continue to rock forward so that you feel a stretch in this outer right hip until you feel that it's engaged to a good stretch. Then allow the body to fold forward. Some of you might have the range of motion to bring the forehead down towards the floor. Seeing if you can keep the weight balanced between the left or the right leg, left and the right leg. And pressing yourself back up into sitting. Switching legs. The right foot replaces the left, right ankle, left ankle on the right knee. And rocking. And continue to fold forward over that left hip, hinging over both legs so that we're not favoring one side or another until you can fold forward and rest the head towards the floor. Very gently bringing yourself back up into sitting, releasing both feet towards the floor. And we'll do a modified bridge here in sitting, unless you like to do them on the floor, and you're welcome to do that. But to come into this modified position, your hands are on either side of the chair, your feet are planted on the floor, contract the buttocks, and start to lift the buttocks up, pressing down through the heels of the hands. And release. So for those of you who would like to lie on the floor into our integrative pose. This is our most important part of the practice, where we take a moment to integrate the movements and the quality of presence within. So you can do this lying down or in sitting. And we'll take a couple of moments here. You're welcome to continue on after I end the class. Just for the interest of time, I'm going to need to end the class in about a minute. So in this place, start to let go any tension, any remaining tension, and allowing for the breath to equalize between inhalation and exhalation. And letting all technique go.